In Kolkata, India has a huge stake in the trade tensions erupting between the US and China, as both these nations are among the top destinations for India's engineering exports. Even as the apex exporters body EEPC, India is hoping the situation does not escalate. Indian engineering exports to the US, the number one destination for these goods, had gone up by over 47% and by China by 76% between April-February 2017-18, according to the data compiled and analyzed by the EEPC of India. India's engineering exports to the US between April and February 2017 and 18 have gone up to $9.21 billion from $6.25 billion a year ago, with a precise growth of 47.3%. Though the smaller value terms, the engineering shipments to China witnessed an expensive and impressive expansion from $1.62 billion to $2.8 billion for the same period. But China remains the fourth largest export destination for the Indian engineering export. Our stakes are quite high in the unfold global trade tensions between the US and China. We would not like to be caught in the crossfire, said EEPC India chairman Mr. Ravi Sehgal. He said raising the import tariff in the wake of US President's actions on the steel and the aluminium, as also the complaint filed against India by the US in the WTO with regard to the various export promotion schemes will be challenging issues for the Indian export vectors. Even from the monthly perspectives, the United States continued to be the topmost exporting destinations for India's engineering products in February 2018. It registered a positive growth both on the monthly basis as well as the cumulative basis during the April to February 2017-18 over the same period last fiscal to the extent of 32% and 47% respectively. The major items of the exports to the US include the products of iron and steel, industry machineries, non-ferrous metals, and automobiles. China has $1.65 billion, while Malaysia $1.12 billion and South Korea $1.10 billion were the top three importers of Indian non-ferrous metal during April to February 2017-18, with a great growth of 154%, 64% and 33% respectively. On a cumulative basis and from the overall perspectives, the engineering exports saw a growth of over 18% at $68.28 billion during the April-February 2017-18 as against $57.53 billion during the same period last fiscal. The share of engineering exports in India's total merchandise exports was estimated at 24.24% in February 2018. While on a cumulative basis, the share was 24.95% during April-February 2017 and 18. So what do you think of India has a huge stake in trade tensions between the US and China, which has got trapped in the crossfire between US and China and the import duties of US? Will India proceed and warn again against the US WTO and the import taxes has been laid up? China's aggressive play in Indian Ocean region has prompted US and India to coordinate closely in Sri Lanka and Maldives, two countries strategically vital for India. This is far cry from years when India worked hard to keep the US out of the South Asia. Now US and India are working together to counter expanding Chinese influence. Maldives is a matter of particular concern. China has consolidated its hold on the island, building infrastructure with its standard predatory pricing methods. Unlike in Sri Lanka, where the Sirisena government is trying to fix its books, President Yamin in Maldives seems perfectly comfortable with growing amounts of debt to the China. China's infrastructure push is natural given though that China is possibly a world leader in the land reclamations. It's the add-ons that are concerned to India. China's financing mechanism mean that China could be controlling large areas of Maldives fairly soon enough. There is a real concern about China's presence in the High Haven project on Maldives' northernmost atoll, sitting in the middle of the busiest transit point between the Middle East and the Southeast Asia, and very close to Lakshadweep Islands of India. Chinese submarines want to use the only viable channel in that region for their forays into the south-central Indian Ocean. Allowing them to control over this channel would be against India's interests, said a source. In August, Amin disregarded India's request to deny permission to the three Chinese warships as a retaliation. India invited Mahmoud Nasheed to Delhi, his first visit here since his exile. Yemen is playing his version of the hardball. Maldives repaid GMR's dues earlier this year, and India suspects China put up the amount, although when it comes to SOAs on drinking water, Yemen dials New Delhi. From a time when India persuaded the US to not to bid for monitoring stations in Maldives for the maritime surveillance for fear of attracting China, India and US have come a long way largely because China has barreled its way here, seriously impacting the security concern. In Sri Lanka, the Hambantatu and the Chinese presence there are pursued or spurred Washington's interest. So it's not for nothing that the US aircraft carrier Nimitz visited Sri Lanka last week without a murmur from India. A source said India and the US warship keep the oceans free. India and US are trying to keep or wean the Sri Lanka away from the debt trap created by the Chinese. Here the Japan plays a bigger role as well, enjoying the huge cash of goodwill in the island. A diplomat familiar with the development said, "We have great complementary and the coordination between New Delhi, Washington, Tokyo, and the Colombo. India's more robust presence in the countries like Sri Lanka would have normally spooked the local population. But the US and the Japan in the game makes it easier for these countries as well." This was alluded by the Foreign Secretary S. Jaishankar of India at the think tank last week. The aim, said source here, is to transform the Sri Lanka from the consumer of net security to a contributor to net security in the international or the Indian Ocean region. In fact, Sri Lanka is being proposed to use its influence with the Buddhist leadership in Myanmar and the Rohingya crisis. India's policies in the Indian Ocean region are undergoing a sea change. So what do you think of India and US are chasing away China from the Maldives and the Indian Ocean?
ኢትዮጵያ ውስጥ 99 ከመቶ በደንብ ተሰርቷል። መንገድ ድሮ 2 ቀን 3 ቀን የሚፈጀው መንገድ በአንድ ቀን ነው አሁን ድራይቭ የምናደርገው እና መንገዱ በጣም አመቺ ነው። መኪናንም አትጎዳም። ብዙ ጊዜ በፊት በነበረው ጊዜ ድሮ ድራይቭ በምናደርግ ጊዜ ጎማ ሁሉ እየተኛ 24 ጊዜ ጎማ የተኛብኝ ጊዜ አለ ባሌ ሄጄ ማለት ነው። ያንን ጎማ ለማሰራት 5 ኪሎ ሜትር በአህያ ምናምን አስይዤ ብስክሌት በሚሰራበት በፓምፕ ምናምን አድርገው ነው ንፋስ የሞሉኝ ገጠር ውስጥ ማለት ነው ሪሞት ኤሪያ። አሁን ግን በየመንገዱ አስፋልቱ ከተሰራ በኋላ ጎሚስታ ታገኛለህ። ጎማም በጣም ሬር ነው አይተኛም ጎማ ራሱ እና በጣም ምቹ ነው መንገዱ።
Over the past decade, Ethiopia's investment in poor sectors have resulted in impressive economic growth and poverty reduction. In order to meet its development objectives, the government has identified key sectors and refocused public spending from recurrent, including payments on goods and services, to capital. According to the recently published Public Expenditure Review, roads now account for the largest share of the budget at 4.2% of GDP, followed by education at 4%, agriculture and rural development at 2.1%, and health at 1.2% of GDP. These investments have helped to increase the size of the road network, boost school enrollment, and health and water coverage. Increased investments in social protection have also enabled Ethiopia to build one of the largest social safety net programs in Africa, benefiting over 8 million people.
Over the last decade, as a result of massive expenditure on these infrastructures and social development in various growth areas, impressive growth has been registered, and as a result of that, there has been significant expansion in service delivery and infrastructure provision, as well as in job creation. Absolute poverty level has significantly declined from around 45% around to now 26-25%. And this is a very significant decline in terms of absolute poverty. In terms of social indicators, there has been also massive outcome in health coverage, in education coverage, as well as in road coverage and in other infrastructure coverage as well.
However, according to the 2015 Public Expenditure Review, over the next decade, in order to sustain this growth and ensure shared prosperity, Ethiopia needs to address several challenges.
In general, we have many good findings, and we've been pleased to see the improvements in the allocations across the budget. The levels of investment have increased so much they're slightly misaligned now with the level of recurrent costs. And what this means is that over time you might lose the value of the assets that you've invested in. So you can build roads, but if you don't maintain them, over time these assets will lose value. A second area of challenge revolves around the need to mobilize more domestic revenues. Much of the budget is financed by development assistance or by borrowing. Increasingly, the government should seek to take over the financing from their own domestic revenues. A third area probably refers to the need to look at the equity of public expenditures and increasing the focus on poorer groups. We do this kind of analysis called benefit incidence analysis, where you take household survey data and put it alongside the expenditure data. And it allows you to make an analysis of how far the public expenditures are going towards the poorer groups in society. Then a fourth area that we would suggest that the government considers is with respect to efficiency. And by efficiency, I refer to both allocative efficiency and technical efficiency. So, for example, in the education sector, you might look at whether the balance between financing primary education versus secondary education versus tertiary education is correct. So, having a look again at the allocative efficiency, we would suggest is an important priority for the government. As you do that, you channel resources to people who are most in need, but you're also freeing up for yourself fiscal space for investments in other pro-poor activities which can help you reduce poverty in the future.
The key message of public expenditure review is that the major expenditure of the government is pro-poor, pro-developmental, and the key priority sectors are roads, agriculture, health, and education. We do believe that the mix of capital expenditure versus recurrent expenditure is balanced, but through time, as we move more into a lot of infrastructure development, its maintenance, service delivery, running cost provisions are going to be also very important, and we need to continue to look at that balancing and address any challenge related to recurrent expenditure.
In order to maximize the returns of public expenditure, the report proposes that Ethiopia should further review and realign public spending. While Ethiopia's capital spending increased service coverage, service delivery lagged behind due to insufficient budgetary provision for operations and maintenance. According to the Public Expenditure Review, one way for the government to raise additional revenues for operations and maintenance would be through advancing tax reforms and enhancing tax administration.
I think domestic resource mobilization in general and also tax mobilization in particular is also a key message from the recurrent expenditure, which we have been acting upon. And definitely we need to do more tax collection capacity reform and improving the capacity of compliance of taxpayers, educating taxpayers in terms of mobilizing more tax is going to be very important. Definitely that is a message that we have been already doing, and we take it very seriously.
Post your comments below, and if you like this video, please give a thumbs up and follow us on social networks and subscribe to our channel. And thanks for watching. This is WEC Daily. Think big, think different. Bye.